Hey everybody, BTO Pro here. Today we're going to take another look at WCFactory, which is Web Component Factory. We've updated the documentation, it's now published on NPM, and I really think it's finally getting to a point that we can start to even do this video. So if you want to check it out, you can hit it up on NPM as well and see the CLI, see we're on version 0.16 in this video. And so the goal of Web Component Factory is to streamline the creation of web components. Web components is a standard that you can check out at webcomponents.org, but it's a brand new tooling or tool that we get in our tool belt for developing the web. It works across basically everything, and Web Component Factory is able to generate build routines that can hit 89% of traffic without a polyfill as of October 23rd, and I believe the number is down here in the weeds. There it is, 99.64% of all traffic natively, just through some simple front-end decision trees about whether it's ES5 or ES6. So goals of Web Component Factory are to abstract away all of the barriers to entering the web component space, most of which come in the form of tooling. So I've already installed it globally, and I made a directory called all of our elements, so to prove there's nothing there. Okay, so then just from reading the little docs here, it says go into that directory and then run WCFactory init. So I've got it installed globally. Then you'll see it says, hey, I need an NPM organization name. For the purposes of this, I'm just going to call it @allarelements, a Git or GitHub organization name, do the same, and then a name for this repo, element library, we'll say. These can, deviate. I'm just doing this for example purposes here. And then a Git address where it'll be wired up to. Now this doesn't exist, so I'm not going to be actually saving it there. Yeah, I'm going to overwrite DS store. Okay, so we can see that's going to run. We'll let that run in the background a little bit, and we'll look at the files. They're getting kicked out in VS Code here. So this is that all our elements directory. So it's setting up what's called a monorepo using Lerna to help orchestrate it. This allows you to effectively, in the end, you're going to have all your elements that you create are going to be in parallel under this elements directory, and Lerna helps ensure that you manage it in Git as one repository, but it gets published as several, so that people could take the different elements you make and break them off. So you can see that's going to run in the background a bit. Let's look at one that's been generated, and you can see this in action. So under Elm's Learning Network, there's the LRN Web Components repo, which is has been generated with this tooling, and then a few elements have been added to it right now. We're in the process of converting our 196 element catalog over to this monorepo approach. So you can see there's these elements in here. And so if you imagine I'm managing all of this in one Git repository, but if you search NPM for @LRN Web Components, there we go, if I could type, you'll see that they're listed here as separate packages. So then if someone wanted to just take the hacks body behaviors package and integrate it into their web components, it has all the documentation on how to do it. Everything that I just showed was generated automatically by the tooling, even down to this little repo page here that has the exact way at which you would implement this in 3 different syntaxes here. Right, so put it into an existing project. You could put this at the top of a file. Here's 2 different ways to pull it in this way. Also has documentation on test, develop, what the build routine is, how to get access to a demo, to work on it. All of that just happens. So initial tooling. Oh, now it's into Lerna. It's going to hoist the dependencies here. And I'm going to pause for a second, and we'll pick it up when it's done, because this can take some time, especially the first time you run it. Okay, so it finished there. We'll scroll back up for a second, see it added these to version control. There we go, finished in 71 seconds. Ugh, Lerna can take some time. But so it's got everything set up. It's also got linting built in via Husky. It's just, layers of automation we're rolling here. So we can see in the end what we get for this initial repo, right? This is the generator made this monorepo. So think of this as your workspace that you would put this up in version control, and your whole team could start to develop elements collaboratively and do so in a standards consistent way. So this generated the Readme even for that top level and pointed to all the different places correctly so that you would have your little NPM badges and whatnot. It has all of the tooling commands built into the documentation here with your project's name templated into them to tell other people how to get this, how to start extending your element set and whatnot. Ways to work with it, some spoilers about Storybook because this is going to have Storybook integration in it. So now we've got this starting point, right? And so the next thing, because we can't, that didn't make an element. This kind of just made our play space that we can actually work. So we're going to run WCFactory new. WCFactory new is about creating a new custom element. And so currently we have support out of the box for all of these different elements. So you can make just vanilla JS elements. You can make lit elements, Polymer elements, a Red Hat element, which is just to illustrate a wrapper on top of vanilla. That, and we forked this concept from them. SkateJS elements, Slim elements, and even a twig component that's just utilizing another library on top of a vanilla element in order to render and process twig on the fly. So kind of trying to show some variability in what's possible here. Looking at where those are fed from, they're in this WCF libraries directory, and we're still hashing out where we move some of these things around. But if you were to remove any of these or modify them, you would effectively modify what this step is. So you could actually add your own custom element into this so that you build off of your library, or that you build the vanilla element the way that you want it to be built. So trying to maximize flexibility. So I'm going to do a vanilla element, and this element's going to be called vanilla. And so what's the purpose of it? Show you how cool this is. The author, I'm the author. Sylvania State University owns this. What license do you want it to be? I'm going to say Apache. I don't want to use SAS in this, but you can. I do want it to have custom properties. And do you want those to be automatically wired into something called HACS authoring system? So we'll say yes. That's going to be a big deal later on. Add a new property. Let's make a title on this vanilla element. It is a string. Its default value should be NATO. No, I don't want to reflect its CSS. I don't want to notice it changing. And I don't want to add in anything else. And so now, let's look at what this tooling is doing. So if we go into elements, it's going to create a van-illa element. And then inside of there, it's going to set everything in motion that this could be worked on and developed as a standalone web component, both from the publishing perspective as well as just all of the tooling needs being there, that this could be worked on even if I moved it onto my desktop or something, or someone else pulled it down. You can see everything's still running in the background, goes through, it templatizes and builds out these files, names them correctly, even puts in our little Readme. We can go check that out. So go to vanilla. We can see that Readme that says exactly how to interface with this, how to do tests, how to get working on it, how to take it further. All of that is just baked in. It's got a templatized gulp file that's been built so that you can sit there and work on this element. And then when it's all done, you'll get a fresh made web component factory element. And so then you copy and paste this line, which is cd into the, where that element is, and then run yarn start. And now when we run yarn start, it's going to open a window directly to the folder we should be working with, which is this vanilla JS folder here, it's going to start a server and it's going to start watching for changes. And so whenever you work on these elements, you're going to work just in this folder. Is kind of the workflow we're going for here. Then this is an automatically generated little mini documentation site, thanks to Polymer, that's going to point you to the details of how it works, and then a demo that shows your element working. And so if I go back into VS Code, we can go to, let's see, we don't want those, we want the SRC, there we go. SRC, we can look at that HTML, we can look at the JavaScript, and we can look at the CSS. So these are your three main broken out files. So you can work on each of them, and then the tooling is going to notice the changes, see it's watching, and then it's going to compile them into the same named file.js, but up a level in the directory tree, and you'll see it's mashed those together. It's also pulled in the things that are in that hacks properties file. It's also pulled in our properties that we put in before. And so the idea here is that you're working in this kind of abstraction that's then mashed together via tooling for your element. And so it actually becomes really easy to switch between libraries as a result. So we don't have that built into the tooling to do it yet, but we'll make another element and we'll show you just how similar these things start to be. It's kind of one of the goals of this project is to unify the way in which we develop and document all of this, regardless of library, because the libraries all do very similar things, with the exception of vanilla, obviously. So what we're looking at here is a vanilla element. And so basically every element is going to assemble itself and say, hey, well, here's that copyright information. It's Apache 2. It's by Penn State. It's going to throw in, there's the description that I wrote in the beginning. It's going to throw in my tag name here. It's going to put, hey, this is a custom element. All just stuff for documentation. It imports hacks and adds that as a dependency automatically to its package JSON. We'll look at that for a second. The package JSON has some things specific to WCFactory just to keep things organized. There's that description again, the name off of the repo, a location for our main JS file, as well as UMD and AMD module variants will be generated by this tooling. Some scripts that are kicked out automatically, need those to be on different lines, but you can see there's start, build, test, dev, right? There's watch, there's serve, there's lighthouse, which we haven't worked on fully yet. But so, it's templatized all of this stuff. It's set it in motion that this is a public repo that can be managed by Lerna so that you can just start generating and publishing elements really quickly once you get your Git credentials and stuff set up. So that's package JSON. Yeah, sure, save that, whatever. So looking at this vanilla element, a vanilla element just extends the HTML element class. The tooling then likes to have these. It likes to have the actual tag name defined, a URL for where the HTML is, a URL for where properties are, where that hacks properties, and where style is. And so using those, that's how it's able to mash that stuff together later when we have the vanilla.js here. All right, so it's using that information to kind of smash together the top of this file at runtime. So let's watch it actually change after we look through here. So you can see there's a simple constructor, setting the tag, pulling in the properties and making sure they're actually available. There's no data binding in vanilla because there's not an agreed upon way of doing template data binding as far as W3C. And so that's one of the major advantages you'll get out of using any of the different libraries. And I'll show that in a second, but okay, we've got, just some boilerplate, right? So then you can take this and you can do whatever you want to it, but it's kicked it out in a way that it has a shadow DOM. It supports shady CSS if you need that. It's got some, it's got hacks baked in, and it's got a templated area for a slot so that you can dump stuff into it and it'll render it. So let's take this slot, the slot tag is there, which is a valid HTML tag. It just says everything that's inside of me, place it here. And let's just wrap it in something just to illustrate that it will work. Do div, we'll do class equals my thing here. Okay, save. The tooling runs in the background, and you'll see it already did it by the time I clicked over to this tab. So the tooling is watching, and then it also analyzed the changes, and it updates the documentation so that were I to come here and do this, and then we inspect the DOM. Here, we'll make this the right size. And so we inspect the DOM, and we will see in that shadow root, there we go, document viewer, there it is, vanilla title Nito, so it's set that default value even though we're not using it. Then I can step down into its shadow root, and I can see that there's a class, my thing that's wrapping this, and then it's got the slot inside of it, which the text has been appended from there. So let's update the CSS and influence that then, right? So we've got this, we've got the slot in there, and you could write whatever you wanted. You could also use other tags in here. So this is the bottom, and we'll put another div, and this is the top. Okay, and then we'll save, and then in vanilla CSS here we can do dot my thing, width 100%, background color red, green, yellow. Okay, and so make the background yellow and make the text color 33333, and we'll do a border 10 pixels, green, solid, or something. Right, just to illustrate this is happening. So those get mashed together. You see it there. I go update my little documentation, and voila. The advantage, primary advantage of doing this via web components is I am guaranteeing that that will work the same way no matter where it is, because the CSS is all encapsulated via Shadow DOM. So that is with a vanilla element, and the documentation will get updated too. Let's illustrate that real quick. So instead of touching this file, right, this is generated, I can go into properties if I want to influence what the properties are. Now, this reflect attribute and observer thing, honestly, right now only makes sense in Polymer, so we'll just get rid of those. I can add additional documentation in here, even though it says it's a JSON file, and then this won't be, validated JSON. Need to tweak that a little bit. It's basically just copying the guts of this and putting it in the other area. So it might change it up a little bit to be like vanilla.properties or something, so it passes validators more successfully. But so the title of the element, all right, and then we'll add something else. We'll say something else, and that will be named something else, and the type of something else is number, and the value of something else is 6. Okay, and so we'll hit save. That's, again, it's recompiled real quick. But now when I go and I refresh this, we'll see it reflected in the documentation. So we see there's something else equals 6, and we see title, Nito, and then the little mini documentation took my comment and put it here too. So now when I go back to my demo and we inspect that vanilla tag, we can see something else equals 6. Now I believe that that's actually wired in as an attribute because it's vanilla. So I think I'll be able to do this, and this is honestly, I'm not positive. So I think if I did host, what is it? It's something else. Okay, so something hyphen else equals, we'll say 6. Then font size is 25 pixels, sure. Save that. May have caught the documentation. There we go. Documentation site takes a little bit extra to update. So that didn't appear to actually influence it. Oh, because it's not, there's no hyphen in it. My bad. There we go. So now I've got that in place. So if I were to inspect this again, right, we've got my thing, neato, something 6. I should be able to set this to 60, and voila. So there are some attributes on a vanilla element influencing the design via CSS attached to it. If you're not familiar with this host, that's something you can do within these shadow roots so that it's just within this element. If you think of it, it's just in this element, do this evaluation. So it's kind of automatically scoping it down to here. All right, so that was a vanilla element. Now, let's say we worked on it, we're done. I'm gonna stop the tooling in the background, and then the idea would be I would do yarn run build, and it'll run the merge again, analyze it, and then it will attempt to build it to everything we have. We have to clean up some stuff with UMD still. Yeah, I see UMD throw some issues, but that then generated updated versions. So we'll look at this. So there's a minified version of what I was working on before with paths resolved correctly. So this is now valid ES6. I could use this in production somewhere. In fact, there's AMD. So there's an AMD based version. And then UMD is going to look like this, but it's because that compile failed. I need to clean up something in the tooling. Oh, another cool thing, working towards getting Storybook integration that's updated automatically. This is something that the Red Hat folks put in place with their Relevance project pretty effectively. Our tooling, though, actually took into account what you put in initially, and it auto-generated knobs, they're called, with the correct types even for those knobs, so that if you're familiar with Storybook, you can have like this living documentation site that people can play with, and you can do your testing there. So we want to be able to align that with the Monorepo so that you can have the entire catalog, which you then publish, or you can have the individual elements that you publish. We want the flexibility with both. So let's go off the rails a little bit here, and let's try to publish this in a way that it'll work across those 99% browser targets. Now we're going to automate this, and this is going to actually be another concept within WCFactory so that you can do it across your elements, but I just want to show it manually and kind of step through what that looks like. So there's a concept that we're going to merge in, need to flesh it out more, of kind of build targets. So like this is all well and good. We were able to develop this element, streamline its development, and it's vanilla, and it has consistent tooling, and it's in a Monorepo. We get our whole team on board. This is awesome, but we need to actually deploy it to something. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a static file that I've been working on recently, and you have to kind of imagine the way at which we would automate this in the future. But so I'm going to paste it into this build directory, and then I'm going to name it index.html so I can work on it. Another thing I'm going to do, there's a surge ignore file that's packaged with this. I'm going to actually copy and paste it around here because I know this will work. So this is off of build because as part of the build, it built those individual files, right, and it put them down in here. But it also has left behind a full working build that has compiled just the files that you need to ES6 and ES5 simultaneously. And so this is a compiled version of Polymer Legacy that will work on IE11. And that lives with this individual little element. So it could, maybe it's not just an element, maybe it's an application or a larger, more complex element or a block on a page or whatever that's pulled in a whole ton of dependencies. You could actually have the whole thing standalone for publishing so that you could demonstrate it to clients or whatever. And again, do this without all of the Storybook tooling and without the little demo site type of concept, because maybe this is pulling in a lot of other elements. Anyway, so we've got those two builds in here, and we're going to look at, you can look at what a surge ignore is. It just says, hey, actually include node modules, because surge.sh doesn't want to generally. So we're going to open up that index. You can see I started working towards templatizing this. Obviously, I we haven't gotten to that step yet. So I would call this would be, like, would say vanilla, right? Web component location here. In this case, this is just going to be ES6, and in this case, it's just going to be AMD, and this is going to be ES6, and it's not going to be build.js. It's going to be the name of our element. There we go. All right, and so this is something I follow me on Twitter. I've been testing this a lot recently. This will hit 99 point some odd % of all browsers automatically, and do so on the fly via this. So there's no, server-side tooling or setup that you need in order to figure out which one to send. It'll make a single decision. It'll then resolve everything correctly from there. So then the idea would be, okay, so now I can use my vanilla tag that I've been working on. So we've got there our vanilla. Let's actually look at the demo. All right, so the demo didn't have anything magic in it. Okay, let's go to, there we go, that index, and we'll just place that vanilla element there. All right, let's save. So this is going to reference everything that I need in order to actually use this tag on the web. And the ES6 and ES5 variants are compiled from source because of that build step that I did. And so let's see what happens. So let's go into cd build. And if you're not familiar with Surge, it's a pretty awesome little tool. So you can do Surge period for this location, then you can give it an address off of Surge. So we'll do van-illa wcf.surge.sh. And that'll look at the ignore files and go, oh, I should actually include the things that are in there, you say. And that just statically published what I've been working on here. So I had some issues with Surge publishing with a new one. So I'm going to do a Polymer serve instead and show you what it looks like with the build. So this is Polymer serve from that build directory, and this works in such a way that it'll hit all targets. You can throw it up on a normal website. Earlier, when I was doing this, and I did it for Slim, I was able to get it to publish successfully to Surge using the same approach. And so you can see if you inspect source on this domain that all we're doing is pointing to the same methodology. So it's picking the right thing on the script, and then it's just putting that tag in the body, and the browser knows what it is, and it'll 99.6% of them will know what it is. It's pretty awesome. So let's do a more sophisticated element then. That was vanilla element. That's all put in motion. We can put it on webcomponents.org. Awesome. So then someone else on the team comes and they say, well, I don't want to do things in just stock vanilla. I want to use SkateJS. And so SkateJS is another library that provides some data binding, among other things, just some nice additional helper functions and things. But it's not as sophisticated as, say, Polymer by design. Like, it's just a much lighter weight framework. So lighter, faster. So this is to show off SkateJS. And now it's remembered these settings that I had from before. So it remembers I'm the author. Penn State, it remembers I picked Apache, it remembers I didn't want to use SAS, it remembers I wanted custom properties, and remembers that I wanted to use hacks. So in this skate element of, what do we call it, lighter, faster, let's put it in size, and we'll make size a number, and we'll say 100 or something. Again, the CSS styling and the noticing changes really only come into play when it comes to Polymer at the moment. We need to add that into the tooling. And so an additional thing, let's just do title or something. And so title will be a string, and its default value is stuff. And okay, so now we've got two things on it. Tooling runs, you notice I did the exact same stuff as I did with the previous one. That's the point of this tooling. It's going to go and run, and let's close these vanilla elements with the exception of this JS one. I'm going to point to something there. So then in the Monorepo, let's see, right next to vanilla is lighter, faster. Lighter, faster looks structurally the same. That's the point. It's going to have all the same build routines. You see, it's actually going through and running build right now and analysis. And then we'll work on it by doing source, just like we did before. So when this is done building, there we go. Then same command, copy, paste. It's going to go over there. And now we're working on a SkateJS element that's going to do the analysis like it did before. There we go. Vanilla analysis. You'll see in SkateJS specifically, we have a little helper class that provides no definition. It just helps bridge it to say, hey, this is actually SkateJS. So then we can see from our properties, size 100, title stuff, we've got those in place. There's our description. Let's fire up the demo, and you'll see it says this is lighter, faster in Skate. We'll inspect, and we'll see this dot has attribute is not a function. Cool. So we'll have to clean something up in the tooling output there. So lighter, faster, we work in the src directory. We're here, and let's search for has attribute. All right. So clearly, I'm going to need to get rid of that. So let's get rid of that because it's too early in the constructor for that. Save. Let's see if that was it or if I need it in the other one. Skate has kind of, no, it was actually the other one. Got bit props. Okay. So let's put that back in. So in order to get, this is to get default values correctly, just in the way that we're doing a skate element is that the constructor, that it's pulling it in from the properties that are going to be piped in at runtime. And then this get props is specific to skate because it supplies data binding. And so let's get rid of that we had there. And save, which the tooling will kick in. We'll see, hey, analyzed it. Let's refresh that and see if it fixed it. It'll be a minor tweak to push into the tooling. There we go, yay. And so you can see that we've got data on the page now. And so this is one of your key advantages of using some of these frameworks, or sorry, libraries, not a framework. So now that I have that selected in the console, $0.title equals things, and now it changes to things, right? So that's, you've got data binding where it's reflecting the value to whatever is in the item. So how the heck did we do that? Well, in our tooling, when it stamps these things out, it's also taking the properties with things that support data binding, because vanilla elements don't, but things that support data binding a property or an attribute to a template here. And this is so this was Skate using lit HTML to process it. So it's then going to take those properties and it's going to stamp them into your HTML file, just to kind of give you an example of like, hey, this is how you could use this. So from there, I can do whatever I wanted, just like before with that div, and then maybe I'd say the size of this balloon is, right, and then I could take that title someone had and I'd make like an H2, and I'd say welcome to land, right, and then get rid of that. A description follows. Okay, so some silly stuff. It's going to recompile, just like before. I'm actually going to take these out because I still need to work on that a little bit. I don't want that call stack to exceed. Refresh, and there we go, way faster. Now I take that out. Okay, so there's the data binding, putting the default values into these areas, and then taking, in this case, the slotted content and placing it there. So you can get an idea of how you'd be able to use this. So let's kick out another one. Why not? That's kind of the point of the factory, is to be able to crank these things out really quickly. So let's crank out Slim.js. slimmer than Polymer, which is about what it is, really. So it's just a very, very lightweight little library, kind of in the neighborhood of Skate. And so now you can play around with that one, right? And we can add support for other ones much easier than everyone having their own tooling to have this kind of unified tooling. So I know where it's going to be. It's going to be right there. It's going to be named a certain way. I'm going to operate on it in the SRC directory. I know to run the exact same commands in order to achieve, what I need to do. For a slim element, we'll see slim actually gets wrapped in this thing here, and so we extend slim with our slimmer than Polymer. We've got our same types of things that help ensure that the tooling gets picked up and runs. So this should look kind of similar, right, to the lighter faster, right? It's got connected callbacks. It's got a custom element define, which is what you're supposed to do in the HTML, the web components specification for defining a custom element. We can see that this extends SkateJS versus slimmer than Polymer, extends from slim versus vanilla, extends from HTML element. And so we've been able to kind of normalize a lot of the differences in the way that these are going to be created and do it as the boilerplate, right? So that we can get these boilerplates that are all pretty much the same thing, so that you can focus less on the tooling, less on how the heck do I get this going, how do I document it, how do I manage all these, right? We're trying to get rid of all those concerns so that your focus is just on, hey, I need to make elements in fill in the blank. Now, for whatever reason, the demo isn't referenced in Slim. I don't know why. But so there we go. So then I know to go to /demo. And now, so there's a Slim element running. It's got, again, the same documentation patterns. Go back 2 levels. Let's do WCFactory new, right? We could kick out a twig component or a Polymer element or a lit element, which is kind of the successor to Polymer. I said Polymer. All right. And you can see you can start to get pretty fast with this. Just hammering through options in order to generate some little demos here. And then it's all going to generate in an extremely uniform way. So that in that case, there we go, over there to this one, and we can see, hey, here's a lit element. And the lit element imports lit element and lit. Our thing extends lit element, tag, template URL, properties, hacks, constructors, connected callbacks. Notice when title and options have changed. Let's look at what the template binding for that looks like, because it uses, lit element uses lit HTML, so it has the same type of data binding, which is another cool thing, right? So let's go to Slim to kind of look at what some of our differences are. So this is data binding in Slim. Slim uses double curly brace for its data binding from a property into writing it into the template there, versus as we just showed with lit. Lit is lit and the SkateJS implementation that we have both use lit HTML. Lit HTML uses the template literal type of methodology for data binding. And hey, there we go. That thing's on the page. And then, because it wouldn't be complete without it, WCFactory new, and we'll do a Polymer element. More list. Right, more list, show more things. Author is me, copyright that. No, I don't want Sass. Yes, I want custom properties. Yes, I want it wired. Add a new property, list name, which is a string. Default value is shopping list. And yes, no, we don't want that. Styled, yes, we want to notice changes. Add a new property, sure. Item count, and item count is going to be a number, and it's by default 0. And we do want to make it available in CSS, and we do want to notice changes. All right, so You can see we can use the exact same process as the other ones. All right, lighter, faster, vanilla. There's more list, which is my Polymer-based element. I'm going to work on it in the src directory, close out some of these, and we will see in that. Where did you go, Slimmer? Okay, there we go, more list. JS, so here is a Polymer element, which extends Polymer elements, got the tooling things in place, got hacks in place. The other thing that this does is it automatically writes in observer callbacks that it's going to look for these, and then in our properties, it's referenced them. So I mentioned that this reflect to attribute and observer come from Polymer, and so if you put in the valid Polymer object keys. This is running, this will finish second. Okay, it's in the analysis. Then you can use those. I need to work on getting those constructs into the other libraries. They all have stuff that does similar things. So in the HTML, you can see Polymer uses these. That means one-way data binding. And then because, let's look and see what's reflected. So item count is reflected, which means in our CSS, we'll be able to do host item hyphen count equals 1. Then color equals blue. Background color yellow. Right, so you can make changes based on what's going on in the internals of your little element here. And so maybe when list name changes, we're going to say this dot item count plus plus, because we'll know it'll be 0 to start. All right, and then we will go here. Okay, copy paste to get this Polymer element started. Hey, opens our more list thing there. Opens up, analyzes it. There we go. Our little demo site for it is spinning up. There it is. Click, I can get my API listing, and then I can get my demo. And there it is, shopping list 1, which meant it fired initially as it was setting up and said, hey, there was a change, I noticed it, put it there. If we inspect this, go to console, and you can see that more list fired because, with the title and fired with what the value was because of the change. Now, that's all blue. And so now if we did, let's take that more list item count, and it was, let's look at what the property name was. It was list name. Okay, so then in Polymer, I can do list hyphen name equals go away. Background color, there we go, and it goes away because this changed, updated the other thing. So you can see we're even getting into, even just making it faster to generate some stuff with Polymer is always wonderful. So this is about where WCFactory is. If you're interested in getting involved, or you'd like to, if you run one of these other projects and you want to change what our boilerplate is, please feel free to jump in. We will be building out our own elements at LRN Web Components off of the LN repo. And WCFactory is getting pull requests, and we're merging stuff in all the time. My colleague Michael Potter also has a video about doing this in Docker, because there's also a Docker image with this. So we're trying to get this down to you being able to onboard team members that really just know CSS, HTML, and JavaScript, and kind of eliminate a lot of these additional barriers to entry right now that are just in the tooling space. So if we could even get it down to can you get Docker stood up and then run this, copy and paste these commands to get going, then we'll be able to streamline onboarding, team members who otherwise would just be lost in tooling hell. Because quite frankly, that was me like 3 weeks ago, just being lost in tooling hell and saying we need to solve this. So I highly encourage you to check out webcomponents.org for more updates as far as, different elements that are created in the community, and to just spread the word that this is the future and that there are a lot of browsers that accept it without a polyfill, and that on October 23rd, Firefox will accept it without a polyfill. So you're going to hit about 90% of your browsing audience with zero polyfill and with just using ES modules based integration routine. So pretty awesome stuff coming in the future. Thanks for hanging around through the recording.